Yes, good evening or good afternoon, everybody, and Merry Christmas. I remind you that you may ask questions or follow-up questions by sending an email message to questions@francislucille.com. questions@francislucille.com. I am broadcasting this from my mom's apartment in France, and I would appreciate some feedback on the quality of the reception, images and sound from some of you, especially one from someone in Temecula, if that's possible, and perhaps Catherine from Paris, and a few others. So I have a few questions. Nancy. I have two questions which are probably similar. Number one, how to articulate the difference between Zen's no-self and Advaita's consciousness or pure subject. I know experientially that they are the same, or at least two aspects of the same thing, but I am wondering about the significance of a negative versus a positive way of expressing it. Number two, how to articulate the difference between emptiness and presence. This is experientially a little more puzzling to me, maybe because the word presence is not 100% clear the way consciousness is. I would love for you to clarify this for me. What I define as self or consciousness is whatever is hearing these words right now. There is no doubt whatsoever that these words are being heard, and that this hearing is for real. That which is being heard may be an illusion, but the hearing itself is real. So the reality that does the hearing, if you will, or the reality of this hearing, is what I call self. The reason is that we claim to be the hearer. We claim to be the perceiver. We say, I am the one who is hearing these words. It's very clear to us that it is no other than I, than that which we call I, who is hearing these words. Therefore, it makes sense to call self that which is hearing these words. Now, if Zen's no self is understood as meaning there is no self in the way I have just described self or consciousness, then the Zen's no selfness is meaningless. The Zen's no selfness is an illusion. The Zen no selfness is not the Buddha nature to which the patriarchs of the Zen were pointing. Now, if no self means no limited self, no personal self, no human self, then the meaning of no self will be identical with what we would call no self in Advaita. The claim that consciousness is personal is the essence of ignorance. So the path to liberation is the openness to the possibility that consciousness or self is not limited. Now, you use the word pure subject. Pure subject would refer to the experience of consciousness without objects, without manifestation. But the experience of consciousness can be without objects, pure subject, but also can be with objects. In which case I wouldn't call it pure subject. I would reserve the term pure subject for the what is called the nirvikalpa samadhi, the samadhi without manifestation, without perceptions. Let's go to emptiness and presence. In my book, presence is synonymous with consciousness and with self. The three words are identical. They just express slightly different qualities of the same reality. Presence points at the timelessness and eternity, at the omnipresence of consciousness and its non-locality. Whereas consciousness points or refers to its perceiving quality. And self refers to the centrality of our human experience. But the three are identical. That's what presence is, not different from consciousness. Now, emptiness may be of two kinds. It may be emptiness of the mind, and it may be the emptiness of consciousness, pure subject. Now, the emptiness of the mind, an empty mind, is still a mind object. It's an absence, or a seeming absence of objects, which is itself an object, like a blank state. That is not the absolute emptiness of the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, of pure subject. The absolute emptiness of pure subject is the experience of consciousness experiencing itself in the absence of objects. That would be the true emptiness. That will be, to me, the emptiness of the Buddha, the shunyata. Not the other form, not the absence of thoughts. As a result, this absolute emptiness is not affected by the presence or the absence of thoughts, which reveals how childish it is to try to suppress thoughts in order to reach the true emptiness, the absolute emptiness of presence. This emptiness, this presence, shines between perception. It is also known as Turiya in the Indian philosophy. So, I hope this answers your question, and the word presence for me is a synonym as consciousness. Odile asked me to, she watched the DVD about the hot seat near the gateless gate. She wants me to speak a little more about that place where we are waiting without waiting, how to reach it and how to stay there. For some of us, as we face the residues of ignorance in the body, and also in the mind actually, the energy of these resistances may be tremendous, and we may experience a fear of almost infinite intensity, an absolute fear, a fear that if we move one step further, we will die. There is an Upanishad in which the disciple is asking questions from the Rishi, and the Rishi says, if you ask further question, you'll lose your head, you'll die. So, for some, we go through this experience of an almost unbearable level of fear that hides, so to speak, that veils the presence which we are. This fear is the armor of ignorance. It is the armor that ignorance surrounds itself with to perpetuate itself. Another way to put it is that this fear is in fact the desire of the self to remain in ignorance. It is only when the desire of the self to liberate itself from ignorance becomes stronger than these resistances, that the desire to stay in ignorance, that liberation takes place. The practicality of this is as follows. If you experience in your meditation a fear of absolute disappearance, a fear of imminent death, that would be triggered by your welcoming the totality of your experience. My advice is, keep welcoming the totality of your experience and don't pay attention to your feelings. Dance on top of your fear. Question number 2. It seems to me that the transition from a personal quest for enlightenment to an impersonal search for the truth is an important turning point. One becomes more peaceful and less impatient. Everything is then like a miracle and the worries are behind. Please, could you talk about that stage? Is it the beginning of the path to the path? Well, what I call the beginning of the path to the path is really the revelation of the universality of consciousness. The turning point you are referring to is also an important one that sometimes doesn't reveal itself right away. It reveals itself, then we seem to go back, and then we come back to it. In other words, for instance, let's assume the way we became interested in spirituality was because we had financial problems. And we hoped that using some magical powers, we could solve these financial problems. And on our way towards financial security, of financial abundance, it occurs to us that even if we would get the financial peace we were seeking, that wouldn't be at all the end of our problems. That wouldn't be yet the happiness we seek. And as a result, instead of seeking money, we begin seeking something else, which is happiness. Seeking for money seeking money is a personal endeavor because it is tied to an object. It is seeking happiness within the realm of objects. Whereas seeking only happiness, no matter what it may be, is spiritual endeavor. It is when we let go of an objective endeavor, the endeavor for some object, gross or subtle, that we enter, if you will, the spiritual path. But not necessarily the path of the energy, which is the path that follows the revelation that consciousness is universal. In other words, we may already be seeking the truth about consciousness, asking the question, is it universal or not? As a result of this endeavor, we may experience some peace, less impatience, the symptoms you were referring to. And certainly that would lead at some point to the recognition that consciousness is universal. It doesn't matter how this universality of consciousness gets revealed to us. So thank you, Odile, for your question. Catherine, in this world where one is often lonely, is it legitimate in this situation to look for intimacy in relationships? Is the desire for intimacy a mark of ignorance, or is it a legitimate need of human beings? The seeking of intimacy in relationships without seeking the intimacy within oneself first is, yes, a sign of ignorance. We can find intimacy in relationship only if we have found intimacy within ourselves. To seek intimacy in relationships without seeking it or having found it within is still the quest for an object, for objective happiness, and therefore a waste of energy and a waste of time. That being said, human beings are pack animals. They are not like cats, which are lonely animals. We, the human body, the human mind, enjoy the company of other human beings. This is, in most cases, a perfectly legitimate need of human beings. But this need is not can be fulfilled through friendship, through improved relationships with our relatives. It doesn't have to be fulfilled exclusively in a relationship between man and woman, or man and man, woman and woman, but in a relationship which has a sexual connotation. Of course, sexual desire is part, and sexual needs are part of the human body. But it is very important to put the needs of the human body in one very specific category, and both sexual and relationship, and to put the quest for intimacy in a totally different category. Then the relationships with other human beings and animals and whatever become a way to celebrate the intimacy we have discovered within. But if relationships are envisioned as a path to this intimacy, it's a very difficult path. Relationships are more like our yoga exercises that enable us to liberate ourselves from our sense of being a separate individual. But they accomplish this mission through suffering, whereas through meditation, through reflection, through yoga, this liberation from attachments is much easier, involves less suffering and more interest, so to speak. It's about being enthusiastic about the path. So, much love and Merry Christmas. Esim. One of the obstacles are these unseen residues of ignorance which I feel in the body as pain, tension, fear, resistance, and so on. If I try to investigate, I see only a fog, but not really why this is happening. Many of these are pre-verbal and pre-rational. They are like locked up in a box, and I can't find the key to open them. To know how irrational these things are, how stupid this fear is, doesn't help me really. In some cases, I can clearly see that I am not separate from the world. But in other cases, the bodily identification is very strong. Fear from illness and pain. Have you an advice how I can bring up these foggy residues of ignorance into sight, so that I can work and investigate them? I would suggest, in your case, two things. When you are not subjected to fear, tension, resistance, and so on, don't try at that moment to really bring these resistances to the surface. In these moments, follow your interest for the truth. wherever it takes you. It may be listening to dialogues, reading books, following the thoughts about the truth, following the rational path. However, when in a given situation in life you find yourself subjected to one of those resistances, you cannot claim at that moment that it is foggy, you see. It is foggy only if you try to evoke it when it's not present. So don't try to do this. Don't try to wake up the ghosts, so to speak. Let them sleep in the closets and in the attic. However, when a ghost wakes up and starts roaming around in the house of your mind, then direct your attention towards it, because then it is not a vague, blurred, formless, hard to find feeling. No, it's going to be real fear, real anger, whatever it is. And when this thing is experientially present, see how it came about. See what was there 3 seconds before, 4 seconds before. See the sequence of events in your mind and in your body that triggered it. So, don't wake up the ghosts, but when a ghost shows up, don't look the other way. Face it. You want to see the color of its attire. You want to see its feathers. You want to see its face. You want to see all the details. Thank you for your question. Und fröhliche Weihnachten. Yeah, and also Merry Christmas and pranams to the Temecula gang. I get messages from friends in America telling me that the link is not working. I would like someone to confirm that it is in France, to make sure that, so please send me an email, or I'm going to take a look at the chat. Well, Mary asks a question. You use the term body-mind as one entity. I'm not clear on this, as I seem to view body as a physical realm and mind as mental realm. How can I align body and mind to view them as one? The answer is as consciousness. They are both made of consciousness. Their substance is consciousness. The substance of the body is matter, but the substance of matter is consciousness. And the substance of the mind is thought or perception. But the substance of thought, perception, is consciousness. So it is only as consciousness that we can view them as one. But we can still connect them by a dash, since they seem to be interconnected in our experience. The dash between body and mind expresses this connection, that a thought that arises in my mind, for instance, the thought to raise my hand, can translate into a movement in my body. And conversely, an event on my body can translate into a perception, for instance, pain in my mind. So there is definitely a connection, and body-mind expresses this connection. But the true nature of the connection between body and mind is found in consciousness, which is their common reality, if you will. Merry Christmas, Mary. Merry Christmas, Mary. Well, we had definitely a problem tonight. I'm sorry. For me, here, everything looked fine. It seems that I was broadcasting. I am going to try to change this and use a different system.